well, I just started recording now, so you guys can fire away. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Who's the MC?
What?
Henry, are you running this again?
Sure.
Good, because I wouldn't have no idea. Like,
all right, well, welcome back to episode 2 of Nerdkast. Welcome back to the council. So since the last time we spoke, I think most of us watched, or at least tried to watch, Phantom Menace. From the conversation that we had off camera, I actually really enjoy the movie. I guess we'll get everyone's thoughts on it as we go around. But the first question I wanted to fire off is, do you think that Star Wars is truly about family? And more specifically, do you think it's about fatherhood? And I think it's a question that comes up in this movie specifically because we see the relationship between Qui-Gon and Anakin in its first form. And I do want to touch on that a little bit later as well. But then as we go through the other movies, and I'll try to keep it exclusively on this movie for this episode. But as you do go through the movies later, like the fact that Obi-Wan's not a father figure to Anakin becomes a big problem. We go to Return of the Jedi, and you see Anakin stepping up and being a father to Luke. You see it in Rebels with Kanan being a father figure to Ezra, and then you also see it in The Mandalorian with Din being a father to Grogu. So do you think fatherhood is really what Star Wars is all about? And I'll start that question with whoever wants to go first.
I think fatherhood, in my opinion, is a little too specific. I think Star Wars does tie in family values throughout at least the Skywalker saga. Again, if you remember from the last talk we had, I'm not too big on the extended universe because I'm just not caught up. Right. But based on the movies alone, like I said, family ties, yes, but I think specifically fatherhood, no. In regards to the Phantom Menace, I know it's a minor plot point, the fact that there is no father, as Shmi Skywalker says to Qui-Gon. I don't think that's a very overarching theme of Anakin not having a father in regards to the Phantom Menace alone.
Oh, do you want to go?
oh,
Shmi. Sorry. Yeah, I just honestly, it's the theme is, I just believe it's just about I don't know, it's just family overall. I forgot where I heard they did talk about fatherhood, as far as like Obi-Wan could not fill like Qui-Gon's shoes. Like he was kind of forced to step in, and this was all Qui-Gon's idea. So Obi-Wan didn't have a choice. This is his master's like dying wish. At that point, all of Obi-Wan's goals were out the window. It's almost like getting a child put into your hands that you didn't want, in a way. And that's a big responsibility. So it was, I don't know, it's more than fathered. It's almost like it's Obi-Wan trying to be like a father, but he's not on that level. Like he's still learning. I don't know. I'm all over the place right now. It's complicated.
I'm curious to get Spencer's thoughts on this because you're the only father in this conversation.
My dissertation on the subject.
I would fail. My kids, they would be dead. I'm serious. I'm not. That's why I don't have pets.
It's not a threat. It's a promise. I think when you're talking about Star Wars in general, I think if you had to pick one, I think the overarching theme is hope. I would think is the idea of no matter how dark or how terrible things get or circumstances become, that they can be overcome with teamwork, friendship, intelligence, training. I mean, there's all those types of things.
Training indeed.
Yes, master.
Not that bullshit race. Sorry.
But I mean, I think if you really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of it, I think, throughout all the movies and even the TV shows and beyond, there are tons of themes that kind of go under the surface because there's been, tons of things that happened in all the different movies, as well as different voices whether they're directors or actors or the different creatives behind it. I think a lot of people contribute their own like viewpoints and stuff like that. I think fatherhood and just familial ties and what family means to the individual is big in general, but as far as like being the theme, I don't think there is a single one throughout. I think, but if I had to pick one, it would be Hope would be my guess, and not just because it was the name of the original movie, but it seems like throughout, I mean, like Rogue One is a big example where it's like between Cassian and Jyn and eventually Leia at the very last word of the movie is just hope.
Leia.
Like keep it in your pants, bro. But
It's me.
It's the Cloud City call.
Sorry, my door was left open.
now for a tour
There we
of
go.
Jar Jar
There we
Bennett's
go.
room.
Well, now I was thinking I'd get naked.
We're gonna start. We're gonna reboot.
Come on, baby, make it hot.
We're gonna reboot MTV Cribs. This is
Because
my
I'm
closet,
that famous.
and this is my bed.
There's not even a
Hip-hop
bed
music
in
comes
here.
I sleep in a box.
Hang upside down from the ceiling.
Shout out U-Haul.
You guys sleep?
I don't.
Yeah, the way Gandalf sleeps.
I got no sleep.
Oh, shit.
Oh, I just got it with eyes wide open. Fool of a took.
Throw yourself in time and rid us of your stupidity.
Shit.
All right. So moving on to the next question. So as a kid, like watching this movie, like I remember, like obviously when you see Jedi's like in their prime, it's like fighting battle droids, deflecting laser bullets. It's like something we've never seen before. And I divert back to the Dave Filoni conversation where he's talking about like, how do you tell the story of the prequels, because the expectation is completely through the roof. And then by the time we actually had the movie come out, as a child, I was always like, I want to see the Jedi's fighting droids. I want to see the different creatures in the different worlds. And when it got to Tatooine, where, you run into this little kid who's, very, I feel like for a lot of fans, like words like cringy and bad acting and like that kind of stuff went on. But like, as I was watching it this time, I felt a lot like those scenes with Anakin as a little kid were not only so important, but I felt like I really appreciated them for what they were, because you see this little kid who's living in these like really difficult circumstances that's super hopeful. And specifically the scene where he's in the hut with his mom, with Jar Jar, Padme, and Qui-Gon, and they're talking about hope in the universe, which actually goes back to what Spencer was talking about with hope being this theme. And then Shimmy says it to him after he wins the pod race, is like giving hope to those who have none. Watching this film now, and have you found any specific scenes in the movie that you might not have appreciated as much as a kid that you find more appreciation for now that we have a deeper understanding of what Star Wars is?
I'll take that one right off the bat if you don't mind. I think this movie above maybe, I don't know about all of the Star Wars movies, but this one in particular, like if you remember, I mean, a lot of the old heads who grew up and were actually like alive when the original trilogy first came out, they did not like this movie when it came out. And I mean, for years, the prequels were just trashed by everybody. And I mean, they still are to a certain point, because I think no matter what you think about them, the execution might have been a little here and there narratively, and some of the choices that were made. And I think the CGI doesn't quite hold up as well as you might want it to. But of course, it's been 22 years since The Phantom Menace came out. But at the same time, I think this movie, maybe more than any of the other ones, over time has been served, it just gets better and better. I mean, when you think of like Darth Maul and how for the better part of 15 or so years, we just knew that he got cut in half and fell down that hole. And then come to find years and years later in the Clone Wars, oh no, he didn't just die there. He is a force wielder, can use the force to like kind of steady himself as he landed, and then just crawled into like a dumpster and ended up being found years later just crazy, and his story went on from there, and obviously culminating in Rebels. And I think whether it's stuff like we were talking about, like Dave Filoni talking about the Duel of the Fates, or just so many things you could really pick apart, things that as time goes on, as more Star Wars comes out, this movie has been it's just kind of aged well as far as where a lot of these characters went. Now, is it the best movie? No, but I think it's been served very well by a lot of, especially like Clone Wars content that came out, Rebels. There's just so much in here that kind of, when you go back and you kind of trace the through lines, it really, it does a very good job of setting up everything. If somebody went and watched this movie first, didn't watch it in order of the release of the movies, if they watched it chronologically as how they play out in the universe, I think this is a pretty good spot to start, because you really don't, you appreciate it more if you were a huge fan of the originals like I was before I saw this. But it's not a bad place to start, because you then get to sit there and watch the progression of Anakin Skywalker, because really from 1 through 6 is Anakin's rise, fall, and kind of rebirth, if you will, for the last 5 seconds of Return of the Jedi. So I don't know. That's a lot of thoughts in 1 minute bubble, but hopefully that kind of makes sense in some way.
I agree. I'm with you on that one. So episode 1 on its own, I was pretty excited when it came out, especially seeing Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. Like I said, those are one of my top 3 favorite characters of all time, because of Clone Wars and Rebels, they added more depth to those characters. Like when we talked last time, like Qui-Gon discovering the afterlife, how to do that, and that's just adds more to it. So you're like, oh shit, he's the dude who did all that. So when it first came out, it was definitely very new, very fresh, and I liked it. I was obsessed. I was buying like the Dorito bags had Queen Amidala shit on it, and like quotes from the movie, and I was really excited. I couldn't get enough of it, and I've always liked them, but then like I kind of started not to like them because everyone else started kind of hating it. I was like, oh, maybe they were garbage, but then later on, it just comes back. It came back. I was like, why did I hate that so much? I actually do appreciate it. And
peer pressure.
Yeah, I guess. But like I said, the Clone Wars and Rebels, they added so much more to it now. They work off each other to really, it gives us something to work with, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. With you.
It's really funny. You guys talk about having the memories of when this movie first came out. And as far as I'm aware, I'm the youngest out of the 4 of us. I'm only 25. So I was only, 4 when this movie came out in 99?
Damn!
That's wild.
So I actually have no recollection whatsoever. And it wasn't even my first Star Wars movie. That would have been Attack of the Clones. My mom just brought home that tape. And she's like, here's Star Wars, check it out. And that was my introduction. So it's weird. It's just strange not having the nostalgia factor like you guys do. But I did see it, I think actually after I had seen Attack of the Clones and then the original trilogy. And then at the time, episode 3 hadn't been released yet. So this was like the last Star Wars movie before, at the time, at least, the story was finally wrapped up. And Spencer, you were talking about aging, and I totally agree that I think certain aspects of the film have aged very well. The CGI is definitely not one of those things. As someone who is watching all the movies again on Blu-ray, especially, it shows its age pretty bad, and you can just see it.
If you have a 4K TV or anything,
I do.
Yeah. Same. Yep.
And
I don't.
And I'm watching on a PS4 Pro, so like I'm getting like some of the best visuals you can ask for.
Right.
So you see like character models and like maybe vehicle models definitely don't hold up very well. I appreciate for what it is or what it was at the time. I would love to go back and watch it on like an old VHS tape to have like a better appreciation of what was there. But it's really funny as I get older, and I'm not claiming to be political by like any means whatsoever, but I'm able to comprehend all the talk of politics that happened like really
for
throughout
sure.
the movie. And
Mhm.
like as a kid, you're kind of dumbfounded by
Well, even
just all the
Texas.
information.
Even
that
the
you're
opening
getting at once.
scroll, I noticed today the opening scroll is very like, if you're like, you know, like I'm a political junkie, so I watch tons of news and stuff like that, so I understand like, you know, what they were setting up as far as like the Congress and the Galactic, you know, Republic and all this kind of stuff, and like how those machinations kind of work. And like it is very highbrow kind of content, and I know it put a lot of people off who were just in for like escape, like pure escapism, which I still got. But there is a lot of like, I mean, there's like tax routes, and you know, like the whole premise of, you know, the Trade Federation being blockading Naboo from the get-go was, you know, obviously Darth Sidious sends them to do it, but they were blocking any trade to Naboo at all, and that was, you know, making them, you know, it was almost like sanctions, where it was like they couldn't get any resources and stuff, so they were starting to suffer as it was. And then obviously they invade them and stuff. But anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you done with your point? Or?
You're fine. Just to piggyback off to wrap it up, it's just I understand the political aspects of that film now, and that's what I'm able to appreciate now.
Sure.
And you know, the choreography still holds up, I think, gorgeously.
It's like a beautiful dance.
Yes. Isn't that sword fighting anyway? It's just a dance.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you also really get the like the Japanese influence in this one. Like you get it from the other ones too a lot if you like are a fan of Kurosawa movies and stuff. But yeah, sorry, I keep cutting you off, man.
You're fine. I think I was done anyway. It's just saying, like, as I get older and
it's like understand Mitch from Waiting.
As I get older and I can understand politics more, I start to appreciate it in the film more. But as a kid, you know, as someone who's watching it for the first time in '99, being like maybe 5 or 6 years old, you're just like, it's all political jargon. Probably makes no sense, you know.
Well, this movie too. I mean, like, you know, again, because I'm a little bit older than you, I remember we had the original trilogy, and I watched the bejesus out of it. And then they released like the revised, like the Redux version in theaters, and I went and saw those because those were amazing. Not amazing, but they were. It was Star Wars, so I went and saw it. But when this movie came out, like the fanfare was crazy. And I mean, it hit us at the right point because like we had the coloring books, the book with like pull all the ships apart and kind of look at what's in it. I mean, the Lego, just everything. It's crazy. So that for that reason alone, that the reason, you know, it was the first new one that we had other than the original trilogy. You know, it was huge, and I think nostalgia factor for me is huge in that regard. And obviously I was 9 when it came out, so I didn't have the same like butthurt mentality that, you know, maybe these highbrow critics might have and still do to this day. I mean, I guess I'm more of an apologist in that sense. But the last thing I want to say about it in this topic at least is like this movie ends up being pretty great for me because of how much new stuff it introduced in Star Wars. Like when you look at the original trilogy in a vacuum, and you kind of like, it's amazing, obviously, but then you go to this movie and it introduced stuff like the Sith and the Rule of Two and the Jedi Council, and you know, just so many pod racing. I mean, so many things that we had no idea about prior to this movie. I mean, it's, you know, it really was kind of a flashpoint for this like second age, I guess you could say, of Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, I think George Lucas, he took advantage of the whole, like I said, I think they said it was like 99% CGI pretty much. But he was able to make things come to life that he envisioned. You know, that's what he wanted. And even though it looked probably corny and bad, but that's what he wanted, you know. And I give him props. Yeah. And
yeah. Go ahead.
I got nothing.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm not gonna knock the artistic value that went into like creating those CGI images and characters It's just when you look at it, we're so spoiled these days as far as visuals and animation go. So it's tougher on the eyes, sure, but it gets easier because you start to appreciate it.
I was checking out like the original Dune recently that was on HBO Max, and I was, it's the same exact thing where it's like at the time I'm sure it was like, what is going on? This is amazing, and then now it's like just like blocky images and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of like watching Toy Story 1 and then going and watching like Toy Story 4. It's night and day how good the animation get, and even just whatever that was, 20 or so year period.
Damn, yep, you're right. Technology, man, crazy.
I know I'm right.
What? You got a friend in me? Sorry. Moving on.
Next question.
Unless you want me to start singing Randy Newman songs, well, we here. And we'll just
that's okay.
No, sweet
Six
God,
o'clock.
no.
Because we can talk about Toy Story, and that's a universe in its own right.
That's
Order the
how
blockade.
you pivot.
Yeah. No. So it's funny. Funny enough that you guys. I mean, you guys like. Funny enough, I actually had my questions written out, and you just touched on almost every single one of them, but like sporadically and not in any kind of form or organization. But I mean, that's what Star Wars does to you. It makes you want to go here, go here, go here. This one's kind of like so the thing I've always loved. There was this thing that came on Animal Planet when I was a kid about George Lucas talking about the inspiration for creatures and machineries that were in the movies, like the walkers were inspired by elephants, or how like there were lizards on Luke Skywalker Ranch that inspired the lizard in Episode 3 that Obi-Wan rides on. And my question is, like, this movie in particular, there are three creatures that are like so easily identifiable. There's Jar Jar Binks, there's Waldo, and there's Sebulba. And even when the pod race was, that's what I said.
You said Waldo. It's
said
Waldo.
Waldo.
Is it?
Where's
whatever.
Watto?
Oh, whatever, man.
Broke as fuck on Tatooine, and that's where.
This episode was like 45 minutes late anyway. So do you think it's as important to have like creatures like this as a part of the Star Wars journey? Like even like in pod racing, like when they showed these characters that aren't really necessarily the most important, like when you have like Gleg Holdfast and Neva Key and like all these other pod racers, but you still can tell who each one is. I mean, part of that's also the video game, but even in other Star Wars movies where you have these creatures like Ewoks and I'm sorry, I'm so tired. I keep losing my train of thought. I might have to call it a night. I'm so sorry. I have to get up in like 4 hours.
Oh, for
I'll
real?
take that question and start running with it. Yeah, I mean, this movie had tons of character designs. I mean, like you were talking about, I mean, the Gungans, that's a huge one. The the Trade Federation, they are Nemoidians. Sorry, the Nemoidians, they're a pretty, recognizable one
Asian.
going forward. Okay,
Can't deny
Alex.
that one.
Bunch of Chinese
what?
aliens trying to tax everybody.
Turn
give him the
freaking
fortune
frogs
cookies.
gay.
Give them fortune cookies. They won't get to the lightsaber.
You can say that. I cannot. But
You gotta get it.
yeah, I mean, the like Henry was saying with the all the different characters in the pod racing, whether it's Sebulba, who's a dog, you have Ben Quadraneros, Gleg Holdfast. I mean, Niviki. There's so many in the pod racing scene. There's a ton in the Imperial Senate, or not Imperial Senate. It's the Galactic Republic at that point still. You got a ton there. You've got a bunch on the Jedi Council and stuff like that. I mean, not to mention the first Dathomirian Darth Maul shows up. I mean, that's probably one of the most iconic Star Wars, like other than like maybe Yoda, probably a couple. I mean, Jar Jar Binks is iconic for all the wrong reasons, but yeah, I mean the character designs in this movie alone are just pretty exceptional. I mean, I thought Sebulba was a really cool design,
Anybody else want to touch on that?
As far as
No,
I guess I would say your question was like how crucial they are to the overall like story, was it?
Well, kind of like the journey of Star Wars.
I gotcha. I mean, you know, for the ever expanding universe, I guess yes, it is, it's important to have these different races. I don't know. I'd say just for developing as big of a universe as the Star Wars universe is, then yes, absolutely. And with the advancements of technology that we had at the time and the capabilities that they have, why not develop? Why not expand? That's all I got on that one, though.
And I feel like it might also come from a place of when I think critics go the hardest on a Star Wars movie, particularly with the prequels, but also with like Return of the Jedi, they seem to go hardest on any creatures like, and I know that like George Lucas was a gigantic Jim Henson fan, and so am I. When you watch movies like The Dark Crystal or Labyrinth with David Bowie, even Yoda was, I mean, essentially he was a Muppet. He was voiced by Frank Oz, who also voiced Miss Piggy.
I didn't know that.
And it's just one of those things where, yeah, it was like funny enough, every time Attack of the Clones came on in my house when I was a kid, Yoda drew his lightsaber and would start screaming. And she'd be like, hey, it sounds like Miss Piggy hitting Kermit the Frog. You'll never get that image out of your head.
I didn't mean to. God.
That would make the end of Attack of the Clones that much better if instead of Yoda showing up to fight Dooku, it was Miss Piggy. She just beat the shit out of him.
But yeah, like I've always been.
Right. My brother's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I feel like I was always like really defensive of like those characters for some reason because I feel like it just added to the overall journey. It is not that funny.
It's pretty funny.
No, oh man, sleepy time.
Oh man,
you little hardworking bastards. God, Jesus. I would say get a job, but you all have jobs. But
and speaking on the subject of like creatures and stuff, who remembers Pod Racer 64?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
I've got it in the tub that's between my legs right now. That's holding my computer up, not for weird reasons. It's holding my computer up, just saying. But it's in there, and it's great.
I think I somehow ended up with 2 copies of the game on 64 for some reason. I know I have at least one. I haven't played it in like years though.
I actually really wanted to buy the. It wasn't even like a revamp or a redo or whatever you call it.
Remaster, I guess.
Remaster. Thank you. I'm losing my mind. But they released one for PS4 like earlier in the pandemic, like back in like March or April. You can get it for like $20 or $15.
Yes, I know it's 15 on Switch, and it's on sale all the time for like $7. And like I could probably get that for like less than $1 with the credit that I have through Nintendo. Honestly, I think about it all the time.
That game's a ton of fun. I mean, I love that game.
So, and something else that you guys had touched on earlier was like the amount of politicking that's in this movie. Something I pick up on, and I think talking about like one of the ways I think the movie gets better and better as it ages forward. When I was a kid, I never once picked up on just how like sinister Palpatine is. Like he's whispering in people's ears, do this, do that. And like, sure enough, they're following his every move. The one scene in particular where he's talking to Queen Amidala's decoy, and he's like, oh, well, Chancellor Valorum, he wants this, he wants that. And she's like, but he's our biggest supporter. And he is just like, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to work. And like, he keeps bringing her to do exactly what he wants her to do. And then you see it in future movies too, with like getting his emergency powers and everything. But specifically in this movie, I just think he stood out so much in terms of like what he is, and now going back and watching it, he's just placing these people exactly where he wants to. But leads me to a question at the very end. After Darth Maul's defeated and everything, and he lays his hand on Anakin and he says, "We're going to watch your career with great interest." That for me is a very nostalgic moment, as well as the first time 3PO meets R2. What are your most nostalgic moments in this film, and that every time you watch it, it just gets better and better for you?
Or for Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
Fucking Darth Maul, bro. And Qui-Gon. God.
Yep.
It's just that so good and so evil and it's just like watching that, it's just awesome. It's when I first saw that like first fight on the desert with Maul and Qui-Gon's like, I'm not gonna drop him. Anyway, just start fighting, man. It's just like
You're
just
doing
like,
a great job.
dude. I thought Qui-Gon, he was getting his ass. He was tired of shit when he got in the ship. He was like, I've never seen anybody like that before. Like,
Well, he literally got jumped in the desert. What would you expect?
yeah, but
He
the
had
motherfuckers-
walked from Mos Eisley all the way out into the boonies in
think
the
about
searing heat after a sandstorm, and
they
some
were
asshole decides to jump him on his speed bike.
That makes
They
he's
were-
already just
they were running actually because I rewatched the whole movie and like they're like fucking booking it.
Oh yeah.
So,
yep. Okay,
Yeah.
Do you
so on
think they
top of
tried to
that,
make... Oh, sorry.
fucked up. Cardio's a bitch.
But do you think they tried to make that look like Satan and Jesus in the desert, or do you think that was just a coincidence?
Absolutely. I don't know about Satan and Jesus, but that's definitely good and definitely evil. And I mean, I never really thought about it like that, but I mean,
Well, it's just like when you see a red guy with horns and then a dude with long hair and a beard, you start looking at it as you're like,
Well,
I mean, the imagery is probably accidental to some degree, would be my guess. But I mean, you certainly can't escape. I mean, just the character design of Darth Maul with the horns and everything. I think the horns being associated with, the Christian and Judaic devil and everything, I think kind of bolsters in our minds like, oh, this guy is evil because he's got horns and he's, red and black is like really sinister looking color combination and stuff like that. And I think that's what it was kind of meant to evoke a little bit. But yeah, I don't think it wasn't like, oh, I love the Bible so much, here's Qui-Gon and Darth Maul in the desert. I think it was like, we got to go to Tatooine because that's where Anakin lives, and that's a sand planet. And Liam Neeson just happens to look like Jesus, look like Jesus in this movie. He's like, what are you gonna
Jesus!
do?
Well, what's funny is
I think what really
of like Qui-Gon Jinn being up on a mantle and like someone saying, my grandma put this up because he died for our sins, not realizing that's Qui-Gon Jinn.
I mean, the likeness is uncanny for sure. But
yeah.
What was the original question again? I think we veered off topic quite a bit.
Oh, the original question was, what was the most nostalgic moments for the movie that you keep coming back to? Mine being like 3PO and R2 meeting for the first time, and also like Palpatine looking at Anakin and like, we're gonna watch your career with great interest.
I would specifically say like Duel of the Fates, but I mean I would extrapolate that and just say the entire like 3-front war that goes on in the end of that movie between the Gungan droid army battle, which is huge and kind of crazy to watch. Like, as much as I did not like Jar Jar Binks, that battle is pretty epic. Obviously, the Duel of the Fates is key in Star Wars canon, and I mean, despite spinning being a good trick, I think the fight up with the Lucre Hulk Trade Federation ships, I think that was pretty cool too. How they ended up destroying the one. And pod racing being obviously the other huge one. Pod racing, and then the third act of this movie in its entirety.
Can I just say on this most recent rewatch, which was again today, when Anakin says, I'll try spinning, that's a good trick, I immediately thought, do a barrel roll. And like, he did that to avoid enemy fire.
Dude,
we were talking
fucking works.
We were talking Star Fox in the last stuff.
No matter what universe.
And I thought about it over the week. I was like, what a terribly missed opportunity to bring up spinning's a good trick when we're sitting there going on about barrel rolls.
Right. I would have
Slippy in the background. Anakin.
I don't know why that's the frog. I just want to be the frog.
That's my favorite meme of spinning, of the scene on Mustafar where Obi-Wan has the high ground. They put in Jake Lloyd or whatever, that little kid who played Anakin in Phantom Menace, right before he jumps, he's like, I'll try spinning. That's a neat trick. And Obi-Wan's like, don't try it. And then he jumps and he's like, yippee! And then he cuts him in half.
And poor Jake Lloyd, F's in the chat for how that poor kid, he ended up like developing like hardcore like schizophrenia and stuff. Because I don't know if it was necessarily because he was bullied so bad, but I mean like people were vicious to him about this movie, and he didn't write the script, I don't think. I mean, he was what, like 10
And
maybe?
he wasn't the director. He was
Yeah.
doing what he was told. Yeah.
Yeah, and people just are terrible. They just drove him insane. I
There.
guess.
Yeah.
That's
Him
a funny
and
thing.
okay, I would say him and was it Ahmed Best?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he got a
So-
lot of flack too.
There's a YouTube video. I don't really want to go too deep into it, of how suicidal he was
I
afterwards.
believe it. Yep.
It's insane how a fandom could I hate to use the word toxic, but
No,
how,
I mean,
how backlash could really get to an actor's head for just portraying a character.
Well,
I
that's
think it's-
exactly how it is. Like
Yeah.
that's exactly what the fan base had become then. And I feel like, and I'm kind of guilty about this for the sequels as well, of just how much I didn't like them. But at no part in the process did I ever think it was ever any of the actors or actresses involved. And like, I just want to say this, like, on the record, it's just like, I don't think that anybody in any of these movies did anything other than exactly what they were supposed to. I think everyone did exactly what they were paid to do, which is act.
Mhm. And the director is the one who chooses, okay, that's good. That's what I want. If they want something more, they can.
well, specifically in the first 6 episodic films, I mean, those are George Lucas's children, basically. I mean, he went through, I mean, before A New Hope was even released, he had all those planned out for the most part. And, he had been working on them for decades. So if you're Ahmed Best or Jake Lloyd being like 8 or 10 years old on the set of this gigantic behemoth of a movie, you're going to do everything he says, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not an actor and I've not been on a project that huge, obviously, but like, what do you expect these guys to do? And so I kind of think of Phantom Menace as kind of like the inset or the flashpoint of this sort of the toxic, to quote you, like the toxic culture and toxic fandom that kind of sprung up around Star Wars a little bit, really started at Phantom Menace, in my opinion. I mean, you could argue probably the holiday special, but that was such like a blip on a lot of people's radar in the late 90s. I think, going forward, there was this segment that they just like, I don't know, it's like, is it really that serious that you need to bully and shame people? And I mean, Hayden Christensen too, we're not on episode 2 yet, but I mean, poor guy, he was in like 1 or 2 other movies that I can even think of off the top of my head before he just like swore
Jumper.
off acting. It was
And Takers.
Jumper and
Those are 2 movies I got.
Takers. That was the one I was thinking of, and he wasn't bad in that. I mean, I didn't think he was particularly bad in the 2 and 3. I think it was the material and the way Lucas directed him and kind of elicited the script and the dialogue out of him. I think they probably should have taken a half second and been like, is this too whiny? What are we doing here? Like, maybe we should change it. But I mean, that is a topic for a different time, unfortunately.
It's funny you bring up Hayden Christensen, because I'm actually a really, really big fan of his, and I've seen every movie he's been in since episode 2. Like, I just kind of had like a Hayden Christensen marathon, and he's actually the one actor I feel like I can compare him to is Robert Pattinson, where you see Twilight, and he was portraying a character the way it was supposed to be portrayed, but like it just wasn't to the liking of a lot of people. But however, you see him in movies like Water for Elephants, or even you see the trailer for this new Batman film, and it's just oh my God, he's perfect.
Robert Pattinson, he's done tremendous amount of work between Twilight and now. I think when people were getting, and again, this is a total tangent, but when people started freaking out about him, I think they were horribly misplaced in their judgment. And just look at his filmography if you really want to judge him by the body of his work. And I would say the same with all the actors in any movie, really. But
yeah, man, he was good in Tenet too. That's what I don't know if you guys saw that.
I haven't seen it yet, but he
How's
looks
that?
really good in it. I have a couple things, if you don't mind me kind of like jumping off. When I was watching the movie today, one thing I thought was interesting is like just to kind of play on how powerful a Jedi and how solid Obi-Wan Kenobi is, even as a Padawan. One of the first things he says when they enter the negotiation room on that Lucre Hulk at the very beginning of the movie is like, I sense something's wrong. Not here, but like something is wrong. And Qui-Gon's like, nah, it's fine. Like it's all good. But it was wild to me because it's like you take that and move that out a little bit across all the movies and you're like, holy shit, was that an understatement? Like he sensed a plot of some sort. Like, why was the Trade Federation blocking this planet? It didn't make sense. Like, why Naboo? And like, what is like a trade dispute? And they're like, what is going on here? And he sensed this like kind of plan behind the shadows. So I don't know if you guys want to comment on that at all.
Funny enough, I was actually thinking the same thing. This is actually like kind of an answer and slash a question too, because I watch a lot of Star Wars theories videos, and he backs the theory that I still to this day do not know why all those trade ships were sent to Naboo. I think the common consensus is because Palpatine knew that would put Valorum in a vulnerable situation so that he could become the next chancellor, but also that, and once again, these are just theories of people doing the same thing we're doing right now, which is just talking and theorizing on these films, but that Palpatine knew that Qui-Gon would find Anakin. Now, I personally don't think that one's true. I think him finding Anakin had nothing to do with what Palpatine had plotted, and it just worked to his favor that he found this boy. But at the same time, though, he knocked out two very big stones, and ever since Anakin got to Coruscant, Palpatine was looking over him, and even it's addressed even in Attack of the Clones, where he's like, "You've always looked out for me ever since I got here." It's like, you're the Chancellor of the entire Galactic Republic. Why are you taking so much time out of your day to kind of watch after this young kid? And it starts you thinking, like, did he plan for Qui-Gon to find him?
Well, just a quick argument, just again, because it's so fresh in my mind. If that was Palpatine's or Sidious's plan from the get-go was for Qui-Gon to find Anakin, then you should probably disregard about like the first like eighth of that movie where they first go on that Trade Federation starship, because the plot, as far as I'm aware, is to, kill the ambassadors of the Chancellor. So I personally look at that finding Anakin as a bit of a plot convenience and maybe heavily coincidental. I don't know. I feel like that's a hard argument to make.
I have a lot to say, but Bo, do you have anything to say about it before I launch into another diatribe?
Launch away! No, I got nothing, man. I just enjoy. I don't know. I didn't even think that far ahead.
Is it just me, or does Bo kind of sound like Aziz Ansari right now? Like, are you hearing his voice kind of like higher
Aziz?
up?
Here's why I think was it Henry or Austin was just talking about how
Jaja Bennett was talking
how finding Anakin was like part of Sidious's plan. I don't think so. And while it was definitely a plot convenience of some kind, because it's a prequel, you're setting up the whole thing. Yes, it's kind
of a gong, and I got excited.
It's kind of
so it wasn't just me.
It's certainly a bit of a convenient thing that happens retroactively. But when I was watching today, he tells Newt Gunray, he's like, go down there and invade those fuckers. He shouldn't, like, the Chancellor should not have sent these Jedi. Kill them, go down, invade this. We need to speed things up, because he was not planning on the Jedi starting to intervene that quickly, I don't think. That's my take on it. And when he says, the the queen is young and naive and blah, 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 and she will bend easily and all that stuff. This is another note I had written down when I was rewatching today. He severely underestimates Padme Amidala. And I think that is like, if Palpatine is this like not all knowing, that gives him too much omnipotence, but if he has quite a bit of foresight because he's a Sith, and he has this huge plan in place and everything, but he's so arrogant almost at every turn, and it ends up being his undoing constantly. Like I think, yes, his plan was, let's send the Trade Federation to, because the Trade Federation, even Qui-Gon says, he's like, they're a bunch of pussies. Like, they're not going to want to negotiate hardball or anything like that. We're just going to tell them what to do, basically, and we're going to be out of here. They were so terrified of Darth Sidious, they didn't know what they were messing with at this point. They were just like, yeah, sure, whatever, we'll do it. They go to Naboo, they block all trade to Naboo, and I think it was specifically Naboo because that's where Sheev is from, and because he's familiar with it, he has a little bit more, let's say, knowledge or whatever of, he has more reconnaissance on that planet as opposed to like another one. If somebody was like, why didn't he choose like Tatooine or something? It's because it didn't matter. But he sends them there. They, he thinks it's going to be very easy to use that whole situation to kind of usurp power from Chancellor Valorum, and it's going to be like this, like, quick, easy, done, no big deal kind of thing. But because of several things, because of the Jedi being sent there, that was what do you call it, a wrench in the cogs of his plan and everything. The fact that Amidala, Padme's so, like, precocious and kind of is forward thinking in the sense that, like, she's got a body double and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's all these things that he wasn't planning on per se. I'm probably talking in circles right now, but I thought that was very interesting. I also thought it was interesting that the gas that they put into the negotiating room, he says Dioxis. And fun fact, if you're a Battlefront player, Dioxis is the same type of grenade that Bosk uses in that game. So I was like, oh, that's a nice callback. But
Well, just to break it down just a little bit further, though, like, I think that's why, like, even sometimes I go in circles as to what the actual plot is, because I'm like, okay, he orders the Trade Federation to get Amidala to sign this treaty, but if she didn't escape, would she have called for the vote of no confidence in Valorum, which then gave him the seat in the Senate, or as chancellor, not just as a senator, but now as the actual chancellor? And it just makes you like, so I guess what I keep going back to is, like, what was the initial intention? And I feel like that's something we might not actually know, which is why we go to various YouTube sources and people who have studied these films and try to see what the actual intent was. But just being Darth Sidious as a senator from Naboo, he wants to move up in power. What's his move? And he says, block trade to Naboo, and that was just kind of his next move. And so I don't know. We could go over it all night, but it's just knowing what his actual plan was is just, for me, is one of the most, because I know where he ends up and I know what he wanted. He wanted power, more power, and ultimately he ends up as emperor. But just seeing how he started it and why is something I feel like we'll just never know.
Well, because he's a Sith. I mean, I don't think it's ever explicitly said that Plagueis was his master. It's implied more than anything else. But I think there's been some theories, and I'm not sure if it's been expanded upon in any of the canon material or anything, but there's some theories that, like, he hated Naboo for one reason or another, is my understanding. That, like, he just did not like them. So the fact that he was a Sith now on top of all that, he had no qualms about, yeah, let's block trade to them, make them, hurt economically with resources and things like food and just trade in general, because that's, in the Galactic Republic, that's how they all stayed afloat, really, these economies, is via trade with other systems and stuff like that. So he's like, we'll hurt him that way. And even after he died in Return of the Jedi, Operation Cinder, that was one of the planets that he was like, torch it, burn it all down. Like he didn't care. He just did not care about Naboo at all, which is crazy because it's his home planet. So I don't know. Final thing I'll say, I think he's in this story and in throughout, I think he's just like the master, like manipulator, but also he knows how to move from situation to situation better than anybody else. Like, I mean, because I don't think the Jedi being sent there was part of his plan. I don't think Amidala or Padme being able to kind of circumvent all his plans, I don't think that was part of his plan. I don't think Anakin was part of his plan. I don't think any of this was. But as the plan unfolded, as things changed, he's just so good at twisting things to his benefit, which is insane to think about. But it's kind of how it plays out over all the movies.
And I wanted to just add something real quick to that. It goes back to my point of just, I think it is a little hard, at least for me, to ignore some of the plot convenience that are especially evident in the first movie. But if I'm remembering correctly, and I just watched it today, Queen Amidala, at least her decoy, is very reluctant to return to Coruscant. She prefers to stay on Naboo and suffer and potentially die with her people. So that's another, I guess I'd call it a plot convenience, but it definitely works in Palpatine's favor. And I'm just not recalling, certain bits of dialogue, but I don't necessarily think that he was betting on Queen Amidala to want to stay. I think because the entire plot was to get her to come to Coruscant and plead that, what is it?
Vote of no confidence?
No confidence, yes.
Well, it is interesting because Newt Gunray and the Trade Federation, they don't tell him explicitly that they didn't kill the Jedi who came to see them. And I don't even know entirely until they show up on Coruscant if he even knew which Jedi were sent. But it is interesting because you're right, when they're about to storm the hangar and get on the giant, Royal Naboo cruiser, Corday, and here's another interesting thing I was watching, there's that iconic scene of Padme looking out the window of the royal, I guess the castle is the best way to put it, but the royal throne area. She's looking out the window in that the big bun, but then there's the royal red and orange guard. And then the next thing we see is her in the all black with the kind of the peacock frilly ponytail thing. And my guess is that between her being in that red outfit and then we jump to the next where they're escorting her and the security guards and the governor and everything, I think that's when she makes the decision to switch over to Corday so she can handle her business and everything. But when they're about to storm the hangar, Corday says, it would be a great, I need to stay with my people, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, what do you think? And looks over at her handmaiden, who we don't know is Padme at the time. And she says, we are brave, your majesty. And I think that was kind of code for okay, yeah, we'll go. We'll go to Coruscant now. So it's so difficult to ascertain, did Palpatine foresee them going to Coruscant or not? I don't know if that was a convenience or what, really.
Well, the way I remember it is that Qui-Gon is actually the one who pleads with her to leave because of the threat that she will be killed or captured.
Yep.
So that's why I make the argue of plot convenience. Because because I thought the "We are brave, your highness" line was insinuating that, her handmaidens are willing to suffer and die along with her, that they are loyal to her and her decisions.
I guess you could interpret it either way, yeah.
And it definitely is shout out to Keira Knightley for who I didn't even realize was in the majority of the film as Queen Amidala.
Yeah.
like
Was she Corday?
She's the decoy.
I think Corday was actually only episode 2. I think episode 1 she had an entirely different name.
Yes,
Is
I
she
believe
really?
that's correct. Yes.
I did not know
I don't remember her name in episode 1, but I do know, Henry, you are correct. And I didn't learn this till just a couple of years ago. Keira Knightley is actually the decoy in place of Queen Amidala.
That's pretty wild. They
And
do
what's-
look very similar when they're all, painted up in all the royal garb.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a part of me that was like, how interesting would it have been if Keira Knightley was Amidala in the next 2 films? But I think Natalie Portman, like, definitely you can see more of a resemblance to Princess Leia, like, especially when they're wearing all white with the Attack of the Clones costumes and then the New Hope costumes. But also, like, I don't know if Keira Knightley's role in Pirates, which is another franchise I absolutely love, especially the first 3 films. I don't know if Elizabeth Swann's character would have happened because she would have been doing Star Wars stuff instead of making Curse of the Black Pearl. But I mean, that's a conversation for a different time.
Yeah, both fantastic actresses. That is a good question, though. I bet you it was probably something to do with the filming of Pirates and that being a bigger opportunity for it at the time. But plus, I mean, they went with Natalie Portman for Phantom Menace. They're not going to recast that,
Yeah. I only have one more question, and this is kind of like more of a fun one. Have any of you read the E.T. is a Jedi theory?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Disney Plus, which is what I rewatched it on this time around, Disney Plus took out after they have the vote now moment and everyone starts screaming vote now. For some reason, they took that out. But in the original DVD and also in the VHS tape that we had from the 90s, in that scene, you can see E.T.'s race screaming vote now. And then I went back to the Extraterrestrial where on Halloween, he sees the guy dressed up as Yoda and he starts saying home, home. And then, of course, when they're on the bikes, like they raise and there's like, oh, he's using the Force. I guess it's not so much a question as much as like that's just me pointing out something that I think is just showing how close like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg is. If you could see Steven Spielberg take on a Star Wars project in any era, post Republic or original trilogy time, or even post Empire like Mandalorian is, or even post Resistance, First Order, where would you like to see him do a story?
Why don't you go, Bo? You haven't said anything in a while.
Oh, I just like listening. Yeah, I mean, Steven Spielberg, what's the most recent thing he did? Was that an Alita movie?
He did.
I'm trying to think.
No, that was Robert
Most
Rodriguez did Battle Angel Alita. He did the Post a couple of years ago.
I don't know if I've seen that.
I think he's done some other things more recently.
I've been out of the loop, honestly, I think since Ready Player One.
Oh yeah, Ready Player One.
I did enjoy.
Did Steven Spielberg do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah.
Talk about a great sci-fi movie.
And he might actually be working on Ready Player 2 right now because I know that Ernest Cline was saying that's happening. Can't wait.
Did any of you see Alita Battle
I don't
Angel?
know. I think for Spielberg, I always associate him. Some of my favorite Spielberg movies are like Jaws and Jurassic Park. So I mean, to see him do something like some sort of, maybe not even like a Force wielder, but just like a beast hunter type movie or something in like the Star Wars universe at like any time period really, but like, somebody who's, dealing with some sort of like it doesn't even have to be rancors. It could be some totally new creature, but there's like tons of crazy awesome creatures throughout the universe, like we were kind of touching on earlier. It'd be really cool to see him do something along those lines, like kind of like a quasi horror movie, but around like some type of beast or animal.
Pretty sure we actually are getting a Monster Hunter movie. Now, granted, it's not Steven Spielberg, but isn't that been
no, it's already out. That's
Is it already
by Paul W.S. Anderson, the guy who did all the Resident Evil movies and butchered all of them except for the first 2.
Didn't he do Alien vs Predator or something? AVP?
Did he?
Did he do?
It's possible.
Paul Anderson.
He also did a really, really bad Three Musketeers movie a couple years ago that was also pretty garbage, but we don't have to get into
that.
Oh, Paul W.S. Anderson. Okay.
But with the last question in mind, see, my favorite Spielberg movies have always been the war movies. more specifically Saving Private Ryan, because that's the one that's in recent memory.
Yeah.
So I would love to see not necessarily a carbon copy of a Rogue One scenario, but I think Spielberg definitely knows how to handle his action sequences very well. So I would like to definitely see a more struggle between two factions, whether it's Rebels or Empire, whoever it may be. I just know that he has a quality touch to those kind of sequences.
Maybe something like a KOTOR setting or like a High Republic, like thousands of years before all this like novel stuff that they're doing right now.
Or possibly even a Battlefront scenario, because I know they have Battlefront novels, and I know the games, at least Battlefront 2, had a story mode as well. So
yeah, he's such a good director. He could do literally anything, and I'd sit down and watch it. Like,
Henry is gone.
All right.
He's like, well, I
gotta go to work in 3 hours.
We can't.
God,
we can't not talk about, and hopefully Bo can get this in the edit, but we can't not talk about Yariel Poof. Do you get? Well, I'll wait for Henry to get back because he knows about it. Henry, do you remember Yariel Poof? He's connecting. Henry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Betcha he didn't connect with audio.
Oh, the
Did
dude
you
with the
connect
long
your
neck from
audio?
Attack of the Clones? I had to fucking look it up.
Yes. Yes.
What the fuck?
Oh, what's his name? The cloner?
What's a long neck? We don't play with long necks.
Which one?
Not the Kaminoan, but actually he might have been Kamin. I don't know, but his name's Yariel Poof. I wish we could share the picture right now so you knew who I was talking about. He's the dude in the Jedi Council who's sitting there and he has like the long.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
I wish so bad that we got to see some like legit Yariel Poof action.
Oh, let me see.
Just like every enemy he kills with the lightsaber, he just goes poof.
Well, what's the like? I don't know if you ever saw the old like Matt LeBlanc Lost in Space movie where I forget his name, but the doctor at the very end, like he's been on this planet for like 40 years or something. He's turned into this big weird like spider monster with this like long neck. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yes.
Oh, I got it.
It's got like, holy shit.
Look, wow.
How do you find this shit?
Well, that's a pretty island.
Is that Octo?
Wait, oh, sorry, I moved it away.
All right, my friends, I'm very sorry. I'm gonna have to peace out for tonight.
I thought you were about to say you had to pee.
No.
You right in time for some Yariel Poof action.
Oh yeah. Well,
When you said, I was like, was that Powerpuff Girl? I was like, shit.
I'll see you guys next time.
See you later.
All right, peace
See
out,
ya.
y'all. Holla.